All right, everybody, welcome to another riveting round of the Salesforce Business Analysts Trailblazer Community Group. Also, does anybody Trailhead Community Group or Trailblazer Community Group? Because it says Trailblazer on the slide, but I've also seen other folks say Trailhead Community Group.
I think it's changed over time.
Oh,
So
Salesforce
whatever it says right now.
Salesforce
I
changing a
don't know.
name? No.
Check the what?
What? All right.
Check the Slack.
Well, welcome
I
to
don't know.
another exciting round. Here, we're going to talk about leveraging AI to craft useful user stories for Salesforce projects. This is the unholy marriage of a presentation that I've done at several conferences and a presentation that Janeen has done at several conferences. But first I have to figure out how my slides work. Yeah, there we go. First, some housekeeping items. So, what is acceptance criteria for this particular session? Well, the meeting will be recorded, edited, and posted on YouTube. So, keep your cameras on at your own risk and just know that if you have to leave a little early, no big. You could always catch us on the Badass SFBA YouTube channel a little later on. Also, we keep everybody's ability to speak, but would prefer if folks were a little bit more formal as far as when they decided to speak. So generally we like to do the presentation first and then we'll open it up to Q&A. As far as the Q&A goes, let me turn that on now. And everybody should see that Q&A is started. If anybody has a question and they don't want to say the word, they're going to forget it at the end. Just throw it into the Q&A box, no big deal, and we will address it later. And then keep an eye on pin posts at the top. Generally, if somebody says something cool, we'll try and pin it. As we have a little less administration today than usual, maybe we won't be as good at that. I try not to spam the chat, but please keep the chat active. That is the place where you can speak at will generally.
Yeah, and I would definitely say Q&As in the Q&A is great, or questions, I suppose, in the Q&A is a great place for it because that chat sometimes does get going and it'll be hard for us to find later. And especially I know when Vanessa and I get going, it's also hard. Like I know for me, if you interrupt me, I won't even know what I'm presenting anymore. So like I get going and I'm going and then all bets are off. So
all right.
Questions in the Q&A is a really good place for it. And we'll definitely come back to that.
So again, know the risks if you leave your camera on. I'd grab some fun screen caps of Pay's not here, I don't think, so I can poke a little fun. All right, agenda today. We have introductions, our presentation on leveraging AI to craft useful user stories for Salesforce projects. We're going to try and spend some time to do a live GPT creation. I think for me, the big takeaway from this one, if you guys feel a little bit more comfortable creating your own custom GPT, I will feel like we have done our job here. And then some Q&A if there's time, because we can talk so much. And then a little time at the end, approximately 30 minutes of unfiltered Baba chit chat. All right. So who am I? I can talk about it more during our presentation. But soon to be reunited with Pay, I think, is the more important part because I am going to get on a plane to Europe a little later on today. So I'm really excited about the big reunion. And then Pay's not here, right? Calling Pay? No, okay. Pay is a 2-time, soon to be 3-time author. Her book on Consulting 101, I got a sneak peek and it is awesome. It's so comprehensive. And it's one of those things like Pay is such a warm person that I really feel like when you read her books, it's not just the information in it, it's also that it feels like she's like holding your hand through your career, which I particularly like about her writing style. The figures and stuff are nice too, but I just Pay's energy is just I love that about her. But Pay is amazing, and we'll see her next month. She's at Czech Dreamin' today. Also, I would like to welcome our co-host. We have a few different groups that are co-hosting with us today. So welcome to the Salesforce Architect Group in San Francisco. Welcome to the Salesforce User Group in Veracruz, Mexico. Welcome Salesforce User Group in Melbourne, Australia. I want to say Melbourne, but I know it's like Melbourne or something. Apologies if I'm butchering your cities, your countries, but thank you for coming, so that we don't collectively as a community butcher business analysis. And that's really the important thing here. And also welcome leaders for joining us. Uh, except Janeen, you kind of didn't have a choice. All right, shall we get started? Yeah. All right, cool. Let's get
Yeah.
started then. Yeah, only 8 minutes. That's not bad. All right. Leveraging AI to craft useful user stories for Salesforce projects. Now I'll introduce myself a little bit more formally. My name is Vanessa Grant. I am a freelance Salesforce badass BA and consultant. I recently started my own company, Vanessa Grant LLC, because I don't know, I guess I'm the brand. Also, I have a website now, vanessa.ba, which I'm hoping to build up when I have more time at some point in my life. But I've worked as a product owner, a consultant, a business analyst, and I have written thousands upon thousands of user stories. Probably the first 100 were trash, but I'm pretty good at it now. And that's what brings me here today. Now, over to my beautiful and brilliant co host and co speaker,
Mhm.
Janeen.
Thank you. Well, I'm impressed if only your first 100 or so were trash, because I'm guessing my first 1,000 or so were probably trash. But like Vanessa, I've also written a lot of user stories. I started my career actually more as what's now probably called a technical project manager, which meant not only managing projects, but also writing user stories. Well, actually, it was pre the user story world, but I was also a business analyst, designer, web designer, etc. So I kind of started early doing requirements and the BA kind of a job. But I'm sorry to say, Vanessa, business process maps was part of the job even before user stories was a thing. But you would not have liked it back then. Or maybe you would have loved it.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Oh,
Maybe. So I've been in the ecosystem um, 20 some odd years, as a consultant, more than 15, but in technology for, well, decidedly longer. But I am a architect and a strategist, but that does not mean that I don't do BA work, because I think that this is part of everybody's job. I don't think that there's a single job where this is not relevant. If you're not writing user stories, you're reading them. But even in any workshop I've ever conducted, in my mind, everybody's responsible for user stories, including my solution architects, including my devs, if they've heard it, if they happen to be in there. Project manager, anyone can write a user story. Anyone should be able to write a user story. And certainly if you're a developer or anyone else, you've got to be able to read them. You've got to be able to understand them. You've got to know the elements of it. This is relevant for everybody. So I think this is really good information. I currently have my own company called Strata Solutions. I'm closer to having my own website. It's like we never get our own, like who has time to do their own website? I'm so busy with everything else. So it's getting closer. It's in draft mode. We'll eventually get that published, maybe in the next few weeks. But that is what I'm up to. And
all right.
I'm also I was the original leader of the San Francisco Architect Group, and now I have some co-leaders, including Ian Gotts and Belinda Wong. So some really esteemed leadership there as well. Doing great things.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here, Janeen. I also will say, as I'm presenting, I can't look at the chat at all. So if something comes up like
Yeah.
you guys can't hear us, or just unmute and let us
Yeah.
know. We'll have to keep it a little bit more casual for this one,
And
but
I'll try to keep an eye on it while you're talking a little bit here. Just it's hard to keep up, but I will try to monitor a little bit here as we go.
okay. Cool. All right. So what's on our agenda for this particular session? We're going to start off with the assumptions. We had to make some of the more basic cuts to our original sessions, so we'll talk about that. Also, want to talk about how user stories should be written. So while I'm going to expect you to know what a user story is, we want to talk about what makes a good user story. Then we'll talk about the concept of the human sandwich, a little less ominous than it sounds. And then we'll hopefully have some time to make a GPT and do some Q&A at the end. And hopefully AI can supercharge your user stories like Jim Carrey's typing over there. So one of the big things that I want you guys to understand is that user stories are formal. There is a proper way to write them formally, but there's also a creative aspect to them. You have to be strategic about them. And that's where, I think the magic of business analysis happens. And with AI, hopefully now they'll also be accelerated.
So one of the things we've had to do is, as Vanessa mentioned, is like cut a few things out of these two presentations. Like these are two big presentations kind of stuck together because we're trying to marry some concepts together. And so we've had to make some assumptions and cut some things from scope. So here's what these are. Of course, that you know what a user story is, and that you know how to run a kick-ass discovery workshop already, and that you know how to get that transcription, that you know what DevOps is and how to use it, when to use it, etc., and that you know some basic AI type terminology, like what an LLM is, what generative AI is, what a chat GPT is, or what chat GPT is, and what a custom GPT is. If you don't, you might need to take some notes, and you might need to go fetch that YouTube channel that somebody did post in the chat for us. Thank you, Amber. And review some previous presentations that have been given, if not by Vanessa, then possibly by myself. I do believe that I think I even saw Sheba here last December or November. I think I presented to her group the original form of this, where we did actually talk about a little bit more detail about what GPTs were, custom GPT, etc. So that information's out there. Obviously, I would say you could Google it, but you could AI it. I don't know what the term would be. You could Gemini it. You could, I don't know. Anyway, you can find that out. Because here's the thing. The days of the BAs, just a note taker, are actually over. It's totally eliminated. Everything you do as a BA, if all you're doing now as a BA is like just taking notes, like you should definitely be afraid, because AI probably will take over your job. I mean, you're in danger. But if you are ready to elevate your job as a BA, then we'll show you where you're going. That's why we are saying the power of your expertise as a BA is relevant and valuable, but it's being elevated. So what you do and what you know how to do as somebody who writes great user stories is important, but no longer do you have to longhand write user stories. You no longer have to just like sit and observe and just like do nothing as a BA or just take mindless notes. Thank God. Oh my God. I haven't taken a note in a workshop in like 3 years, because now I can be an active participant because something else is doing the notes for me. I'm a critical thinker. I can make my customer elicit, give me the answers that I need because I'm listening actively and saying, what else? Tell me more about that. I can really pay attention. And as long as something else is getting my transcripts, I know that I have that information to go back to. So at most, I'm writing down, check what, Jim said at a minute 23 into this, workshop, so I can go back and grab that. And then I can find that in the recording and in the notes. So once you've done that, then you know that your user stories are going to be well-defined works of strategic BA art. However, just knowing what a user story is or how to write it isn't really enough. You need to know how to determine if it's actually good. So you have to know just not like good, but is it great? So maybe somebody who's just a junior BA or somebody who's brand new to the workforce is okay. Maybe they're going to come and they might start by writing some notes, and it's really basic. But you guys are like the brilliant, experienced, highly sought after BA. You have to be writing great user stories, and you've got to, get most of them done by your assistant, because all you're going to do is refine them, because your job now is just a subject matter expert. And when I say just a subject matter expert, let me tell you how important that is. You don't have to just write notes. You don't have to write longhand user stories, but you really have to know what makes a great user story.
So what does make a great user story? Well,
Won't you tell us? Yeah.
let's talk about it. Let's
do it.
Let's do it. All right. So how should user stories be written? Of course, folks know about the as a role, persona, I want, what's the goal? What is the what? So that what is the benefit? What is the business value? Now, yes, there's the formula, there's the formality part of the user story, but let's dig into these a little bit more. So persona. I would say the best way to think about the persona is who is going to be testing this user story at the end of it. When you're doing UAT, who is the one who can definitively test whether this is working or not? You don't want to be too generic in your persona. I have walked into projects and seen most of the user stories start as a system. And I hate to tell you, but Salesforce does not really care about what you want. So maybe don't make it a persona in your user stories. You also don't want to be too specific. If you're saying, as Frank, I want, maybe that's a little bit too specific. Think a little bit wider than just Frank. When we're moving into the what of the user story, what do they want? The important thing is that you don't listen to them when they say, I want a button. Unless you are working at a button factory, buttons are not the point of the thing. Um, Oftentimes, your users will make the mistake of giving you a solution, and you do not want to throw in the solution. So try to avoid things like button. Try to avoid the word pick list. I would even avoid the word field. If you can avoid the things that would lead to specific solutions, you and then focus it more on what the business is asking for from a business perspective. You give your admin, your devs, your solution architects more flexibility to decide what the best way to manage it is. So let the experts decide. Then for the last part, the business value. Of course, if somebody's like, I want a button so that I have a button to press, like I've heard of people make requests, maybe not that simple, but like where I want the thing so I can do the thing. That is not business value. You have to really dig into the why of why is this important? How does this add value to the business? Because we have to understand that it is worth actually doing. Now, back to more formality. This is not Salesforce specific. This is an acronym that is used in business analysis as far as invest is always kind of the judge whether a user story is done well or not. The I stands for independent. We've got negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. So let's start with independent. With independent, we're wanting to avoid dependencies. So if you cannot do one user story without this other one being done, maybe consider combining them into the same user story. If you can avoid dependencies, you can't always avoid dependencies. That's where the creativity comes in a little bit, but if you can, you should. A user story is not a contract, it is a conversation. It is going to evolve over the course of a project and should get more and more solidified as it gets closer to being developed. It should provide context and not solutions. So again, maybe it'll be a field, maybe it'll be a thing with a validation rule, maybe it'll whatever it is. It should be negotiable. Valuable, that's kind of the user story for the sake of it. I'm Mike likes his buttons purple. We're not going to write that user story. I'm sorry, Mike, we're just not doing it. Okay, then estimable. You want to be able to write user stories with enough information that the dev team, the solution architects should be able to break it down into tasks and estimate the story points. So you should be able to gauge what the level of effort for the user story would be. I'm going to get to small in just a second because as you can see from that photo from London's Calling, where that photographer grabbed me at that mildly embarrassing moment, I am a big fan of small user stories. So
Only small user story.
only user stories though. I don't live in Texas though. Maybe I should move. Okay, so testable. Um, so you want to make sure that the user story can definitively be tested, that there is going to be a this passed or it didn't pass. And also that you understand that the solution architects and the dev team can understand that user story so well that they can write you can write acceptance criteria for it with the business. Then to small. So small is my favorite part because I think this is one that people struggle with the most. But you want to get a user story down to the smallest piece of work that represents some value that can be delivered in a sprint. So if you have conjunctions like the word and, split out that user story. I personally get down to each field. I've actually even written a Salesforce Ben article on 10 questions you should ask when somebody says, can I just have a field? Because there's a lot that goes into a field. It's like, okay, well, is it a mandatory field? What should the format be? Who should be able to see it? All of these things are things that would go in the acceptance criteria. So when you have it smaller, the other thing is that improves accuracy and story estimation. When you're saying, As a salesperson, I want a quoting process so that I can do price negotiation with my clients. There's no way from that user story to gauge how big that thing is. Whereas if you're getting down to like a field level, it's a lot easier to gauge what the level of effort for that thing will be. I think also, and this is where the DevOps process comes in. Um, if you have a lot of functionality in one user story, it's going to be a lot harder to move that through the DevOps pipeline and get it into production. So let's say you've got 10 things in this user story. If 9 of them are moving to production smoothly, but one is getting stuck, there's some error and you're having to troubleshoot it, you are holding back all the business value from those other 9 points. And what Agile is all about is how do we get to business value faster? Um, and then lastly, devs like to see progress. I like to see progress. Business likes to see progress. The project manager likes to see progress. As things move to done, just psychologically, it feels better. So now that we understand a little bit more what makes a good user story, we're going to talk about where does AI come in. So this is where we're going to introduce the concept of the human sandwich, where we start with the humans, we throw some AI in the middle, and then we have to end it with humans because it's not a sandwich unless it's got 2 of whatever it is. Um, and Janine, did you want to mention the human in the loop thing?
Sure. I mean, Vanessa and I kind of had a little debate about this last night. I said, the common terminology for this is human in the loop, and we were debating like, well, do we want to change our little acronym here? And I'm like, no, I love this because I think what we're saying, in some ways, is like, humans are on either side of this, right? When we often talk about this idea of human in the loop, it almost feels like, human is like one part of this, and here we're kind of saying humans are kind of on either side of this, where AI is sort of like the thing we're doing in between, but humans here start the process and end the process. And I think that that's really appropriate for what we're talking about here. um, and it really applies to almost everything we do when it comes to AI, even in autonomy. But the point about autonomy, because we're not talking about autonomy here, autonomy, it really is where humans in the loop are, where we start to be a little bit more cautious about that. But this is definitely a human in the loop situation. In this case, we're just saying, AI in the middle. So just to kind of keep those little concepts in
All
mind.
right.
Yeah.
So where do the humans start? Well, it starts with a great workshop and a transcript. So you've got your great workshop, you've got your great transcript. You have to write some user stories from it. One of the ways that can help you write some of those great user stories and leverage AI to do that is also creating some great business process maps. Now, this I think will be more probably for your dev team and your stakeholders, but I do think it's an important thing to mention in the context of user stories because a business process map will give your team context. When you have a dev team that's working on individual user stories, a lot of times it's difficult for them to get the big picture. And so being able to see things visually, it's the picture is worth 1,000 words. And so it makes the understanding of why are we doing this, where are we going, and communicating the process easier among the stakeholders, the dev teams, and everything. It also makes it a lot easier to identify your personas, particularly if you're doing a business process map that includes something like swim lanes, or you're using universal process notation where you have to indicate the players involved in that particular step. And it's also a really great way to find gaps in your user stories. So, as an example, this is more of kind of an example of what I worked on a really big project. I worked with a great solution architect, and what she did, which I thought was brilliant, is that she would actually lay out her business process map, just long lines, step by step at the top, and then on the bottom, she put all the user stories that were associated with that particular step. It made it really easy for everybody to see where we were at for each user story, which steps were completely built out. And were there any blockers? So, for example, we used some color coding. So, red was blocked, maybe blue is done, but you could use color coding, and it just visually was so much easier, especially for a large project, to follow where we were at in that particular project. So, the other important thing where you have to inject your humanness is talking to your team and strategizing. The user story at the end of the day must be understood by the business stakeholders because they have to know what they're agreeing to. They have to know that what they are saying success looks like, and understand it clearly. And also has to be by your development team. Your tech team has to know enough so that they can start thinking about how they're going to build it. But one of the things that I tend to do is when I'm on a new project, especially if I'm working with a totally new dev team, is that maybe I'll write a few user stories and then say, hey, is this how you want to receive them? Is this a user story that would make sense to you? Can you give me some feedback? And oftentimes, one, it'll also make your dev team feel like you're collaborating more, because you are and you should be. But also sometimes they might give you feedback on what works well for a particular thing. So you want to strategize. um, now yeah, and that way, you don't have poor Cody over there going like, "What?" So now that you know how your team wants the story to look, and you've done your really like kick-ass workshop and have a transcript, and you're like ready to go, we have to figure out how can AI accelerate this process. Or if I were asking AI to speaker notes, I might say, how could AI supercharge this process? We have to, was it take it to the next level? So with that, over to Janine.
Great, thanks. Just want to quickly ask, Gayatri, you have your hand up. Do you have a question? Okay, you might have just hit the raise. Okay, I
Yeah.
see another hand. Oh, a hand went up and then went down.
Yeah,
I
let's
just,
throw those in Q&A if we could, please, guys.
yeah. I just wanted to just check and see if somebody, accidentally hit it or if they actually had a question.
Okay.
And then Lindsay's hand went up for a moment and then went back down. So was just checking to make sure everybody was okay. All right. So now we've talked about how we want to present our stories and what makes sense and like the basic structure, so that we know what is a good story, hopefully what makes a great story. But how do we get to the point of getting AI to generate it the way we want it to? And we've all learned how to create a prompt, right? And we know each time we go into GPT or Claude or Perplexity, whatever else, we start with this prompt and we say, I'm a business analyst on a project and I want to do this and I need the tone to be like this. And here's the structure of business, of a user story. And we write this big long prompt. But really, the best way to do this, especially if you do this a lot, is to create your own pre-trained GPT. So those basic instructions are already built in, and you don't have to start with all of that information right from the start. And so I've created, I have my own. Vanessa's kind of got one. We're going to show you how to build your own later on. And I've trained mine. I've already told it the basics. You are a business analyst. You do a certain thing. You use a certain tone. And you know that the format is as a, I want, so that. And you know what goes into each one of these. And it already has some basic understanding of what a business analyst does and what a user story is. But then I've also given it some specific instructions. Like for me, if I'm running an early in a project, the discovery session, I don't necessarily want it to provide acceptance criteria. Later on, sometimes I do want it to provide acceptance criteria. So I'll give it, some additional prompts sometimes to tell it what I want. I specifically know that I don't want it to solution, but I do know that I want an output as a table ultimately, because I'm going to obviously put it into Jira or some other such thing, because that's how we often work our user stories. So my pre-trained GPT, can you go back?
Oh, sorry.
My pre-trained GPT knows how to get the job done. It knows how to ask me the right questions if it needs more information. And it should provide the information just the way I want it to, because I've already told it what to do. But I do sometimes have to remind it, because it is a little forgetful, because it is, after all, a dumb machine. Let's not forget. It's a smart machine, but it's a dumb machine. So just having your workshop data is not enough. It's great, you've got your transcript, but we know what happens in these meetings. First you start off, you have a little chit chat. How was your weekend? Did you have a nice Memorial Day? Did you do anything with the family? You're going to want to pull some of that stuff out. It's not going to hurt anything. You're not going to get a user story about the barbecue at the beach. It's just not going to happen. It's also helpful to clean it up. The good news is that's usually at the beginning. It might be at the end where you have, let's talk about the next meeting. It's helpful. You may also want to remove personally identifiable information. again, one of the benefits, and we don't really go into this a lot, as you might know, but one of the benefits of using your personalized GPT is that it's not sending data back out to the LLM. Sometimes an abundance of caution is not a bad thing. So I like to take out the name of the company I'm working with, and I'll replace that with sometimes the client or the customer, and the name of my company with the consultant, and any of our personal names with our initials. Abundance of caution. And it also prevents me from ending up with things like, as Vanessa, I want blah, 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 blah. I want to remind GPT that I want personas, not names. I haven't seen that problem, but hey, you never really know. So again, remove personally identified information, substitution, find replace your friend. I have done this with 100 pages of transcript information, and there's no way you're going to do that manually. I think I saw Lucy on here. Lucy knows. Lucy has helped me with this in the past. Thank God for friends like Lucy who can help you with doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
This is not
It's a lot of
this
work.
is not a lot of fun,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is
Scrubbing.
this is the grunt work part, and if we could get our GPTs to help us with this part, it'd be great. But that's kind of the whole point. This is a little bit of a manual stuff.
Yeah, and I'll actually point out another manual step, like especially if you're doing a custom GPT with ChatGPT, you actually have to go into the advanced settings so that it's not going to train the LLM. Because by default.
Okay. Yeah. Once you've done that, you're gonna give it a shot. But because it's a pre-trained GPT, again, you don't really have to give it that detailed prompt because you've already given it the pre-instructions as to what it's doing. So you're going to say, please review this transcript and create some user stories. You're going to load up your transcript and put it in. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at what that output looks like. Does this look like what I'm expecting? Am I getting enough user stories? Like, if you put in 20 pages of transcript and you get 10 user stories, you're going to be like, are there more? Did you get acceptance criteria when you didn't want it? Did you not get it when you did want it? Did it use the personas you're expecting? Are you when you're spot checking, are you seeing that it's using something that doesn't look like transcript data specifically? Yeah, Dodie, I just spotted your question there. Yes, I just had a pop-up go right in front of your question here. Sorry, that took me right out of it. So, no, it's not that the setting doesn't train the GPT. It's that we don't want to send our data to the large language model. We don't want to send our personal data in our personal GPT out to the world. Acronym is AC is acceptance criteria. Hell D, you know that. Okay. So anyway, back to our scheduling program. So again, I'll review the initial output, see if I'm getting what I want. I might prompt it and say, hey, are there more stories? By the way, don't forget to give me my personas, etc. And I might run it again and see what I get. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so once I feel like I've gotten enough user stories and that I'm getting what looks like the right kind of output and it's starting to look good, then I'm ready to review my, you can go next slide. I'm ready to actually really review that content. And as you can see from the slide, I might find out it's not as great as I thought, but in this case, like, it's a good thing I'm a subject matter expert in whatever the project is. In the recent case I had a CPQ project, so I'm a CPQ expert, or I'm an Agentforce expert, or I'm a Service Cloud expert. And so in an ideal world, the person who's doing this, you are some level of expert in whatever you're doing, because you can't really review these if you don't really know the platform. And this is, again, where something Vanessa and I talk about a lot. It's great if you know how to write a user story. If you don't really know some of the details of the platform of Salesforce or any other technology that you're working with, you may or may not recognize if you've got content that is relevant or specific to what you're doing. Because if I say anywhere in here, hey, this is for a CPQ project, for example, the GPT may take an idea and go, oh, I know what CPQ stands for example, or I know what Sales Cloud does, or I know what Service Cloud does, and just create some stories that are really generic. And we have to be really careful because those aren't necessarily good user stories, and they may or may not have come from the conversations we had with our clients. And we want to make sure that we are really focused on stuff that only came from those transcripts. So we would take a look at our user story list and try to identify if things came specifically from that transcript data. And you know that they did. And I'm going to kind of reference back to somebody posted something in the chat. We know that they did because we sat through those workshops and we paid attention. Somebody mentioned that somebody would just scroll through their phone when, like, because they knew that the notes were being taken. That's not a good use of your time if you're a BA. You need to be paying attention. You need to be actively engaged and engaging with your client. Just because something else is taking your notes, that means that all you are is a note taker, and now you're not really being an elevated BA. You're just sloughing off your duties. So if we want to take a look at some sort of fictionalized content here, here's what the content output might look like. So I'll have you just click once, Vanessa. So here's an example of really clear, obvious duplicates that might have come from, if we were talking about CPQ, these obviously you can tell because the persona is the same, and they both say something like to integrate pricing strategy of Salesforce CPQ or to integrate our pricing strategy of Salesforce CPQ. These are clearly duplicates, with the exception of one word. Easy. In this case, it's a little bit harder to spot. One says, as a financial analyst, I want to have real-time integration with financial systems. And the other one says, as an integration specialist, to ensure seamless integration between Salesforce CPQ and external ERP systems. Now, okay, somebody might not spot, if they weren't an expert, that these are actually the same thing. But one of these is not a user. One of these is actually a solution. And in all honesty, I'm not even sure that the financial analyst would say, I want to have real-time integration with financial systems. The financial analyst might state, I would rewrite that. Like, I would rewrite this as a BA. I would rewrite this. I want to know that the financial information about my customer was accessible to me, alongside their account information, right? I might write it something like that. I'm not going to talk about integration with financial systems. That's a solution, right? So you have to really look at this and understand what you're looking at. And if we go to the next one, you can also see that these are two very standard CPQ kinds of stories. To have a simplified quote creation process in Salesforce CPQ, that's exactly what CPQ does. Or to customize Salesforce CPQ to support complex product configurations. They're also huge.
Too big.
This is the whole project, right? So you have to be able to spot those. And also Salesforce Architect, not a user. Here's a couple good examples. As the legal team, I want to build efficiencies in how we use Salesforce for intake and generate order forms via CPQ. You would have to know CPQ to know that intake and order forms or like intake forms are not like part of the standard CPQ. That had to have come from the conversation, or to access detailed customer usage and engagement data in Salesforce. Like, that's something specific to that customer, right? So there's, I don't know, what are there, 20 user stories on this? And that was a lot of different examples just in this one little grouping of stories. So you can see that you kind of have to know what you're talking about in order to even do this refinement. This is where it's really critically important that as a PA, you have to know this. You can't just generate this and pass this off to somebody and say, okay, go ahead and build it. Like, you absolutely have to refine it. And that's where all your time is spent. A lot less time than if I had to write 300 user stories by hand. But it was absolutely a much, much simpler process by doing it this way. Again, elevating your job as a BA.
Yes. And I'll also just point out, you don't have to necessarily do it this way. This is a way that works for Janeen. I do mine sometimes a little differently, where I might just take snippets of transcript where I know there's like 2 stories and say, grab the 3 stories that are from this snippet. It really as you kind of iterate on your own process in your own GPT, you will figure out what works well for you. And it might even be different per project. But this is where you can work with the AI and figure out how best to accelerate your own processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, I actually go through, because I know, because I've sat through these sessions, I do still write user stories during workshops, because I will hear some, right? I will hear some, or I'll write down, or I'll be like, or I'll write a half user story because I've heard it, but I don't have all the details worked out. I'll go back to the recording, so I'll jot some of those down, and they may or may not come out of this, right? They may or may not come out of the transcript. And so, but again, sometimes time is critical. Sometimes I don't have enough time, and I don't have enough human resources to do like a long form project like this. If I've got 4 months and 10 people on a project, I might not even use AI to do this. I might absolutely do this by hand. But if it's just me and I have 3 weeks, yeah, I might shove the entire thing in. So you're right. There's a lot of different ways to do this. You work out what works for you. You might do this a page at a time. You might do this one the entire 100 pages at a time. It really is dependent upon, in the case, that example you saw was one page of users, one snippet of user stories, but that came out of 20 hours of transcripts. So like you really have to kind of decide. But human oversight is obviously still critical in this process. This isn't something that we can just like, again, feed into the machine and hand it off to the customer or hand it off to your dev team. This just doesn't, we are still, as BAs, our jobs are absolutely critical, required. And we've become actually even more so, where the teams are really relying on us, and the time we spend vetting these stories and making sure that they're right, that they're accurate, that they're appropriate, and just making sure that we are spending the time to guide this project, because to a certain degree, we really are guiding the scope, what gets built, what we're doing. And if we've allowed our AI to kind of take control, that mistake is still our responsibility, right? We are responsible for ethical decision making, to make sure that bias is kept out and fairness is brought in. We're accountable. At the end of the day, humans are still accountable for these projects. And of course, as we all know, quality control still often falls to us. Not only is the BA hat, we often put on that, test script writing hat, UAT test hat, and anything else. And we're responsible for keeping our customers' data safe and secure, our own company's data safe and secure, and making people not feel overly hesitant and concerned. Because we also want to promote the technology that we're using, and we want to promote people feeling like it's safe to use. Because the reality is AI is not going away. It's not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to become more and more prevalent. So we have to figure out ways to bring it into our lives and use it safely and securely. I'm sure you've heard this idea about AI hallucinations. All an AI hallucination is something that it makes up because it doesn't want to say, I don't know. And so, for example, when it says, I want to do something that's not in my transcript because it knows that Salesforce can do something, it's a hallucination. That doesn't mean it's not true. It just means it's using data that you told it not to use. So now there are hallucinations beyond that, but you always have to check the data. We have to be the human in the loop, but we have to be the better human in the loop, the better BA, the advanced, elevated BA. So raise yourself up on a pedestal. Your job is really, really, really critically important. You are not a note taker. You are not an entry-level position. There's no such, BA is not an entry-level position. BA is a critical thinker, a strategic thinker, somebody who is really, really important to the project, to the team. So in no way should you ever think of this as something like, I'm just a BA. You are not. You are so important. And just elevate your skills, learn how to do whatever it is you need to do to make sure that you're also a subject matter expert here.
All right. I'm going to try and I think we're running short on time, so I'm going to
Are we?
try and get through these a little quicker.
Okay.
All right. So more places where you need the humans. We're going to add some more humans to the loop now. So you need acceptance criteria. If we're talking user stories, you can't have user stories be development ready without acceptance criteria. I walked in on a project once that was already 6 months deep. They were expecting to start build like the week after, and all I had was 1,000 user stories from a big four firm that had been there before, with zero acceptance criteria and context. And I was like, yeah, you're not starting build in a week. That's just not happening. So acceptance criteria. So what is acceptance criteria? It's what needs to be true in order for the user story to be considered successful. And really, that's going to be the responsibility of your stakeholders. They have to be able to decide what success is. They can't be ambiguous. So you can't say, I need an easy way, or this should be done easily. Too ambiguous. And what easy is to you might be different to your developer. So again, testable. You have to be able to say definitively whether a solution meets an acceptance criteria. Avoid specific solutions. Again, we're avoiding the word button. And if you want to be a little bit more formal, a lot of folks like using the Gherkin format, which is the kind of given, when, then. That's a very formal way to do it. Not usually my favorite, but it really depends on the project. If you've got a very, very custom project, I tend to find that those work out pretty well. I personally like to number my ACs, and generally when I get to about 7 is when I'll start thinking, should I break this user story down a little bit more? Also, when we're talking about humans need to be involved in and approving. I would not send a user story into build without a stakeholder saying, yep, that is correct. You have captured everything that I need. I am complete. That sign off is part of the CYA, and AI will not be able to help you with that. You guys have to cover your own butts. If anything, AI will only expose your rears if you don't actually do the due diligence on the human side of things to make sure that you are still presenting the right things to your stakeholders and to your dev team. All right, we're at the let's build a GPT.
Oh, okay.
So
Do we
there's
have time?
yes, I
Okay.
think we've got about maybe 5 minutes for this,
We can do
and
this
then I'll
fast.
go through some story, the rest of the news, and then we'll do a little. Actually, how's the Q&A looking?
I don't see any, unless it doesn't display. I don't actually see anything in Q&A.
Oh, okay. Maybe we were so
So nobody
clear.
has any questions at all.
Excellent, fantastic. Then we're okay on time. All right, so let's work on the GPT. If I switch tabs, do you see ChatGPT, or do you still see the slides?
I'm seeing the slides.
Okay.
You're gonna have to probably stop
Yeah.
sharing that and go to the other thing.
Yeah.
Luke asked, how do you have stakeholders review the user stories and acceptance criteria the same way you've always did after you've refined them yourself and you've gotten down to what you think are an appropriate set of stories, then you refine them. Also, something we didn't really mention here is transparency. I don't just go do this without like letting anybody know. I mean, I definitely do tell my customer, is it okay if I do it this way? Or, I mean, I do have transparency with them. So,
All right. So I'm
which,
going to my GPTs, and that's
okay.
where you will go into create a
Yeah.
GPT.
To be clear, in order to do a GPT, this is usually part of the paid program. So,
Yes.
all right, so you're going to go ahead and create a GPT. Now, notice that there are two options. In configure, you're going to fill out a form like this, name, description, instructions, and you're just going to put stuff in. Or you can click on the create side of this tab on the left. And this is a little bit more conversational, which is kind of nice because you can have a conversation about it. Let's do it this way because I think it's a little bit fun. So we're going to say, what would we like to make is the first question. And so we're going to say, I would like to build a business analysis or user story. Do you want to be more specific about writing user stories, or you want it to be more business
Yeah, let's
analysis?
do user story.
Okay, build a user story engine. It's called a user story engine. The other thing I would be cautious about, you don't want to necessarily say things like Salesforce or anything specific, because anything, if it's got that in the title, you will have trouble publishing it. Now, typically speaking, you can keep it private for yourself. If you published it, You can publish it so that anyone with a link can get it. Like Vanessa has access to mine, but it can't have like Salesforce in it. So you've got to be really careful with things like that. So, and you also don't want to constrain yourself that way, because a user story is technically a user story. And what we found is when we were testing it, then we were getting a lot of stuff that had Salesforce in it for no reason. So,
Yes.
all
It's
right,
getting very
great.
solutiony. But this is one of those things, like, I think the pro version of ChatGPT is like $20 a month.
Yeah,
And it's
that
I
was
don't know
fun.
that this GPT we're building now is going to be any good, but it's how do you get past the I'm scared of doing this to just experimenting with it? You don't have to share this with the world. You don't have to use it for your current project, but this is part of this in the new world of what it's like to be a BA. All right, so it's ready to go. Do I
Okay,
want to
so
try the preview
wait,
in the
so you gave
chat?
it that one instruction and that was it? We're ready?
Yeah, it decided that
Okay,
it's done. So we can
so
refine it more, or I
okay,
can.
well let's not. Let's like that was how easy that was. Okay. So ask anything.
Let's see.
Like type in create.
I've got a test
All
transcript.
right. So she's putting in a test transcript. Yeah, great. And like she's not even really telling anything. And I mean, but look, you can see how it's given her some information. And so now within a CRM,
Oh, it
like
even said likely Salesforce. That's good.
it's like it knows you. Wow. Um, and like great as a staff member. Now you might think that staff member is not very persona-y,
No.
and you might say, you might go back and refine your GPT to say, I want like better persona definition. You might say that I want my acceptance criteria numbered. You might say I don't need edge cases. You can give it whatever instructions you want to give it. You might say I want the tone to be more formal. Usually it prompts you for some of these things, but it doesn't have to. View key contact roles without sensitive details. You can give it any prompt. You can say, like in my case, where I've given it the instructions that I want my output in a table. She wants acceptance criteria numbered. Great. I mean, she's giving it the most minimal prompts. And now it's giving us the same user story again.
Except it made up Emily. Emily doesn't exist.
Emily, right? So you have to go back, like you have to help it, right? You have to say, okay, this isn't correct. All right, so it's actually created a persona for you, like a real persona.
This is actually probably more the persona. I don't even know why they let's make a person for it. But this is again
Right.
where, you know, you have to know what good is so that you can train the GPT properly. That is, I think, the big takeaway. I'm not going to save this particular one, but this is a great basis of like, wow, okay, I grabbed 4 user stories and based on the transcript, that's approximately how many I thought it would be. So just want to at least get you guys over the hump of being worried about doing this. It won't be perfect the first time, and that's okay. Don't get frustrated. You just have to train it. It is a baby. It is a baby BA. So just like you would mentor a new BA, like mentor your GPT, give it some love.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
All right. Do we want to
Do you want to go back to your
any
slide? You had a few more slides you
Q&A?
needed to cover.
Yeah, I do. Let me.
If anyone's got any questions, now would be a great time while she gets back to her slides. Oh.
And if we don't, then I'm going to keep on rocking and rolling since we are already pretty late. If you guys have questions and are throwing them in the chat, make sure you're throwing them in Q&A because the chat is just like. Oh, there are some in Q&A. Look at that. Oh, sorry. I thought I was looking at the chat. There were so many. Okay, cool. If the role of the BA is shrinking, what area of expertise should the legacy BA move
only
towards?
you're getting it. Oh, so I don't get them.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe that's
Yeah, if the role of the BA is shrinking, what area of expertise should the legacy BA move towards, especially if you've identified with the role of BA? I don't think that it's shrinking. I think that historically people have just BAs are generally. Yeah,
hold on. Somebody's typing on their keyboard and it's drowning out your voice.
I think it's Felice.
Okay.
Sorry
Somebody can
to
just
call you
mute
out, Felice.
themselves.
Okay.
Felice, can you mute? or maybe you're trying to talk, but okay, there we go.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So, uh, yeah, I don't think that the role of the BA is like going away. I think if you're trying to be a basic BA, like I'll tell you, I worked on a project once where I came in, the program manager, and this is a huge project. The program manager literally told me that he thought that the BAs were only supposed to take notes during meetings. He didn't want them to speak. He just wanted them to notes during meetings. If that is the BA that you are not progressing in your career. And AI will take over your job. They will find a cheaper way to do that. So that's what we're talking about, is those types of things that are not strategic, that are not the analysis part. Those are the tasks that are going to be going away. It's more that the BA role is going to be elevated. So you're going to have to do more analysis with the business, but also with the GPT or whatever it is that you're working with, in order to get the outputs that you're going to need faster. That is going to be, I imagine, the expectation in the future. Do you disagree, Janine?
I don't think the role of the BA is going away at
Yeah, I
all.
don't think
In
it's
fact,
going.
I think
I
your
think
presentation we just gave was that it's not going away at all, and in fact, it's more important than ever, and the whole world would not exist without us.
And I'll be honest, if anything, I think that maybe in the future we'll even be evolving to being the developers, where if BAs start doing some vibe coding because we're the people who are better able to communicate what the business needs are. Sorry, developers, I'm not meaning to
Well,
go after your jobs, but I could see that being a thing.
well,
Just
in all
my
honesty, Vanessa, I mean, most of the time I've been a BA, I've actually been responsible also for configuration as well.
oh
I don't know that I've ever had a BA role. I mean, maybe nowadays it's separating more and more, but like I've almost always been hands-on also as a BA. But that could just be differentiated depending on your desires and skill sets. I mean, some people maybe don't want to do that, or I don't know.
I think
But
also the project too. Like
yeah,
I've hardly ever been hands on my project, in my
yeah.
lane.
Yeah, but I also, I also came up through hands-on, so it could just depend, right,
Yeah.
on the project. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So Vanessa mentioned that Gherkin format was not her personal favorite format. Just curious to hear what the personal favorites acceptance criteria format is. Um, Mine are not generally not particularly formal. So I just try to make them kind of simple, still testable. Um, but I might just the the information needs to be required. Like I'll just make it simple as opposed to like, given that the information is input, then it should be required, blah, whatever. But yeah, I don't gherkin too much. Do you have ACs, like a format they use for ACs, Janine?
I think I'm more. I don't know if it's not traditional or traditional. Just I just write them out like you do. I don't. I wasn't a Gherkin, called a Gherkin fan. I don't. Sorry, but
Yeah.
like I actually feel like it's almost too constraining for
I think
ACs.
it's too, I feel like it gets solution-y very quickly when you're using gherkin, my 2 cents, but okay. Can you send your configurations for your GPTs? I'm not at a point yet where I think I'm ready to share mine. Mine still needs some refinement, but it's a work in progress. I'm not quite sure if I want to share, because I also kind of feel like it's just my way of doing things. So I don't know. I'm still thinking about it.
I can't send you the configurations, but I mean, in theory, I could share it with you, but I would rather you build your own
Yeah. Um,
because I think it's good. I think it's good experience, and then you can refine it the way you want to refine it.
yeah.
Because you can't refine mine. So if you don't like the way mine works, you're stuck.
Yeah.
So it's better for you to build your own.
Yeah.
Good
And to that
experience.
point, Janine shared hers with me, and I was like, now I'm building my own. Not that Janine's works for Janine. That's the thing.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
so what
When
transcription
it
tools, in addition to Gems and Gemini, do folks typically use in their workshops? I use Fireflies, is the one I pay for. But I've seen other folks use like Otterbox, Spinach.
and honestly, Zoom transcript works just fine.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Doesn't need to be special. Doesn't need to be fancy. Just the and again, I'm not using the summary. I'm using the straight transcript. I want the word for word. I don't want a summarized version of what came out of it to try to do user stories from. I actually want the word for word, because otherwise I'm going to miss something.
Okay. Does the GPT listen to your directions? I found with the free version anyway that it ignores my instructions. Like if you told it not to create named people, would it stop doing that? It needs to be reminded often, and maybe that'll get fixed at some point. Like, oh God, the M dashes, the times I have to tell it stop doing M dashes. But I do find, especially if you kind of frame things in a more positive way, as opposed to saying, don't do this thing, say, do this thing more, I find is a little bit more effective. But it's a child. You have to remind it. You have to prompt it. Okay. How do you have how do you have stakeholders review the user stories in AC? I think we already covered that. You just set up a meeting, I would say, or email it to them. Vanessa, did you already put a transcript into your ChatGPT to start generating those user stories? Yes,
Vanessa, I want you to refresh. I want you to refresh this so my little Baba. Is it so cute when the two of us are the Babas? Just refer. I don't know. I think exit and read.
Sorry.
That's okay. Now go back in.
Oh no, I don't know what I did. Okay, there we go.
I killed off the other the animation because I didn't have yours in this.
Felice said, "Did you already put
Oh,
a transcript
come on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
That's
it
even
shouldn't be
worse.
live editing. All right. Did you already script into your GPT to start it? No, I didn't. I uploaded it while I was creating the GPT. I just had it on my desktop because I had already a transcript that I cleaned up. What do you do about the as if it applies to multiple personas? Oh, I've had that come up. I think that's where it's like the you know, do you want to be creative about it? Like, or what I do sometimes is like just the way I manage it, but I think different people manage it differently. I'll usually pick like the highest level persona as the person that wants it, and then in the acceptance criteria, I'll say like this should also be available to these other folks. Just generally how I handle it, but I might approach it differently. I think you can be a little bit creative if you've got multiple people that are wanting the same thing. Okay. We are already pretty far in, so I'm going to go into my last news, and that way at least we can have a little bit of unstructured chat, if that's all right.
Yep.
Cool. Let me just look through these questions again real quick.
If you go on, it'll take off this terrible slide.
All right. Yeah, sorry. All right, cool. Let's move to some news and opportunities. I'm going to fly through these because I know we're running late. Thank you all for hanging out with us. So still, I'm going to keep saying it till the end of the year.
Your slide is not advancing.
It's not?
Nope.
You don't see free AI certs and training?
No.
That's weird because it looks like it's that on my bevy.
I think we see it, or at least I see it on my screen.
Oh.
Same.
Okay.
That was weird.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, cool. So free AI certs and training. The AI associate is RIP, but you can still get your Agentforce specialist for the end of the year. I recommend everybody doing it, even if you're not into Agentforce. It's just going to be one of those things. Just get the thing. It's $200 that you'll save in the future.
And actually, something that I don't know if you even saw, they literally just announced this like yesterday, the day before. They're doing some special. I can't even remember what it's called. It's so new. Some special things in the next month or so for getting your the innovator and the champion things that they're having us CGLs sign up for to promote with our groups. I think I just signed up for mine to do next week to help promote our group. So keep your eyes out for that. Vanessa will take a look for hers. I know I will. I'm doing mine like June 4th to help promote to get. They want like everybody to get those badges, those super badges. So we will be, I'm sure we'll get that information to you all as soon as possible. So if you haven't done those yet, take a look for those. And we'll also be getting you whatever information we need ASAP.
Yeah, a CGL is a community group leader. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, community group leaders. That's us people.
Rodrigo, did you have a question?
I just want to say that it's the Agent Blazer Challenge. It's
Oh.
it's called. It's how it's called.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Like it just happened and I just didn't have the information in front of me here. So thank you.
All right. Also, don't forget, this is the last month to get your web assessor vouchers completed. So after this upcoming month, no more criteria, no more web assessor. Everything's going to Trailhead Academy. So please plan your certification journey accordingly. Also, if everybody wants to hear more about how much I like small user stories, in June, I'm going to be participating with 2 non-Salesforce BAs, but 2 folks that are pretty big in the BA universe, Angela Wick and Imal Bariali, on Split Happens, a user story showdown. How small should we go? This is a free LinkedIn Live event. If anybody is interested, it's here. It's also on my LinkedIn,
Cool.
but that'll be in June.
Fun.
Also, you guys have one more day to apply for Dreamforce. Those tickets are expensive. So even if you were just like a maybe that if it were free to attend, that you would go, submit a session. Like the process is kind of annoying this year. I think they got inundated with like AI submissions last year. So they started the process a lot earlier and shortened the window and made it bigger. But I do think it is still worth doing. Publicly speaking and showing your expertise wherever you are at in your journey, you are an expert at that point in your journey, is, I think, worth it. One day left to apply. And then calls for speakers. We've got We Dream in Forcelandia, and some of these I think are closed, but the things are still open. So,
Buckeye Dreaming is not still open.
it's open till for next year. It's for the 2026 one. So they're already collecting. Anyway, or come speak to our group. We're always, this is a form that Pay has open. If anybody's interested in coming to speak to our group, we've got a couple coming up later on this year that are new speakers, and I'm very, very excited about that. And then with that, I'm going to actually, Kim, I see a hand raised before we kind of. Cam, did you have a question or come?
Sorry.
That's all right. Oh, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
You were muted. You're unmuted. Now now you're unmuted.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Sorry, I missed the super bad stuff. Do we have a deadline to finish it for the agent?
Oh, it's at the end of the year. So you have all of 2025 to get your Agentforce Specialist certification.
No, not for certification. Sorry, the super badges. We were talking about something. Did I miss something? Confusion.
No, I think that's just like a new thing. So no, I don't think there's any deadline to complete. It's just that Salesforce is trying to enable us to get these things done because they really want everybody to get skilled up on all their AI stuff.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I know it's only 19 minutes left, but I'm going to stop our recording so we can be a little bit more candid in our conversation. If anybody wants to join us for the more candid portion of our events, you're just going to have to join live. So bye, YouTube folks.